Good evening all, welcome to Carrow Road, where Norwich have made it 3 unbeaten in the Premier League. The good start continues for the Dean Smith reign. A 0-0 draw with Wolves, which doesn't sound the most exciting, but you've got to remember how well Wolves have been doing recently, how much of a good team they are. You just got to look at Ruben Neves in the midfield for them. That is a serious Premier League player. Raúl Jiménez up front as well. We all know how good he can be, and great to see him playing, incidentally. Actually, if you haven't watched the documentary on the BBC about his recovery from his head injury, that's well worth seeking out. But yeah, 7 points from 9, including the win at Brentford, which of course was Daniel Farke's last game, the 2-1 win over Southampton, and now this 0-0 draw with Wolves. To put into context how well they'd been doing, there was a good stat on the BBC ahead of the game, which was that they'd taken 16 points from their last 7 Premier League games. The only other teams in the division who could match that were Chelsea and Manchester City. So they had I think they lost 4 of their opening 5 games of the season under their new manager, Bruno Lage, and but all the XG and all the performance data was suggesting that their performances were good. It's just they were coming out just the wrong side of things. They lost 1-0 to Leicester and Manchester United. I remember off the top of my head. They beat West Ham 1-0 last weekend. We all know how well West Ham have been doing in 2021, really. If Norwich were to get a 1-0 win against West Ham at the moment, we'd be well chuffed with it, wouldn't we? So I think a 0-0 draw, though it doesn't sound particularly exciting, it was certainly a better performance than the 0-0 against Brighton here not too long ago, and definitely better than the 0-0 up at Burnley, which was the game before that, which was a real attritional one. And there were attritional elements of this one, partly because of the weather. It has actually, the rain's eased off now, but it's Storm Arwen, I think it's been christened, isn't it? And the rain really sheeted down at points today. It's been on and off, quite blustery, pretty chilly, but it has actually calmed down a little bit now. I think it's been worse elsewhere in the country. A 50th Premier League clean sheet for Tim Krul, 8 of them now with Norwich. It was also his 300th English League appearance, I think it was, if I'm remembering that one correctly. Lucas Rupp made his 50th appearance for Norwich as well. I'll get into my ratings straight away. I'll go Milot Rashica as my man of the match as an 8. There you go, right on cue. The rain has just started coming down again. I can hear on the City stand roof. The sponsors gave it to Billy Gilmore, who was also very good. He was our player watch this weekend, so keep an eye out for that on Sunday. A bit of a deeper dive into his performance. We've seen flashes of what he's capable of. He's had a few good halves. I'd say this was definitely his best consistent 90-minute performance. The opening half an hour was really looking very bright, but then he had to drop into the deeper, more defensive midfield sort of anchor role because Matthias Norman was forced off after 35 minutes. He'd been struggling, and I'm sure Dean Smith will give an update if he can now in his post-match press conference. But he had been struggling with this. He described it as a pelvis ligament, or a ligament in the pelvis area, and he'd had that injection therapy. If you remember, Daniel Farke had spoken about that. So he didn't appear to be in any obvious injury issue. So it seemed more like pain or maybe illness, something like that. But that forced him off, which did at least mean that he's avoided getting suspended, because he's on 4 yellow cards, and the amnesty for that isn't until Boxing Day. So he's got a few games still to go before he can forget about the 1-game ban. So we'll have to see whether he'll be involved. Quick turnaround Tuesday night up at Newcastle. I'll go 7s for Gilmore, McLean, Aarons, Williams, Gibson and Rupp. McLean, certainly second half, he was bang up for the fight everywhere and just kept putting his foot in, got some good cheers from the crowd, really ran his race and worked his socks off. Both the fullbacks really good today. Both got forward, both tenacious in their defensive work as well. Williams particularly just doesn't take any rubbish, does he? He's going to stand up for himself, and I think he is in possession of that left back position now. Gibson probably the better of the back two. Rupp could have been the hero today. It was probably his best Premier League appearance for Norwich, I would have thought. And, he's not had too much game time, but he just didn't have the quality to finish things off. And as I'll come to, he's involved in 2 big chances in the second half. Grant Hanley, I'll give him a 6. He had a difficult end to the first half where the crowd were really on his back. He played Tim Krul into big trouble. He conceded a corner unnecessarily. There was plenty of good work in there as well, as always, some good headers and blocks and showing the leadership. But that moment really could have been the turning point for Norwich, and he's got to cut out those sloppy moments. So him, Pookie and Sargent, I'll just about give a 6, which is maybe a little bit harsh, but just because they didn't have the quality to make the difference today. They both worked their socks off today. They really, the big noticeable thing, particularly in the first half, maybe before energy was sapped a bit, was that Norwich were higher up the pitch. They were pressing hard. It was noticeably different to what we'd seen under Daniel Farke, where possession was the main focus. This was Norwich acknowledging they were playing a better team and that they had to graft their way into this game, and it's worked, hasn't it? So they both go home with, you know, feeling satisfied with what they've done. Krul, I'll give a 6 just because he didn't actually have a great deal to do. I mean, he did what he had to do pretty well. Norman as well, and Goalless didn't really make much of an impact off the bench. He came on in the 68th minute for Sargent, who was pretty knackered by that point, so he gets the nod ahead of Cantwell. Came on the right wing at the time Rashica was still on. So yes, possession 45% for Norwich, 14 shots. 4 of them were on target to 5 shots for Wolves, 2 of which were on target. And the thing that I noticed an upturn in terms of the stats, an initial look, is that they had an 84% pass completion rate. That is the highest that it's been since the opening 2 games of the season against Liverpool and Manchester City. It was down at sort of 68, 67% in recent weeks. So that shows that the use of the ball was a lot better. In the first half, I think about halfway through, it was on about 33% possession. And the fact that they've ended up on 45 shows that they worked their way into this game. And in the end, it wasn't a particularly nervous finish. If anything, it had been Norwich pushing, but both teams were sort of punched themselves out by the end, really. There wasn't too much chaos in injury time. First chance of the game, 6th minute, Pookie, good work on the right, squares Josh Sargent with a good shot from the edge of the box, but curls just over the top right corner. The best chance for Wolves, probably the whole game really, it was Nori, their left wing back, got in behind Max Aarons, low cross, Jimenez gets across Hanley and fortunately pokes it over the bar. For a player of his quality, he probably should have been doing a little bit better, so a bit of a let off for Hanley at that point, because he had reacted before him. As I said, 35th minute, that's when Norman went off. 43rd minute was when things really got nervy for Hanley. He basically tried to turn away from Jimenez rather than clear his lines and go back to Krul, but he made a mistake with the pass and it went too far in front of Krul, and all of a sudden, I think it's Trincao is closing in on him. Krul makes the tackle essentially to clear it, and then fortunately the shot from Moutinho sort of fires into Krul's leg, so he can make that save, and then Hanley can clear his lines. As I said, just after that, he also shanked a pass behind, missed Krul, and it went out for a corner, and the crowd weren't happy at that point. They were some pretty angry groans. But Norwich should, and probably certainly could, and probably should have taken the lead into half-time through Max Aarons. A lovely move, 45th minute, started by Billy Gilmour, spreading it to the right. Aarons weaves his way towards the box, 1-2 with Rupp, and then he's just got the keeper to beat. But Sarr, as you can see there, spreads himself well and saves with his legs to keep the score at 0-0 at half-time. Rashica, 50th minute, snapshot, sort of catches everyone by taking the shot early, and it just probably a yard wide of the near post. The keeper was beaten if it had been on target. 68th minute, that's when Goalless came on for Sargent on the right, still a 4-3-3 today. Sargent was the only change. Cantwell back onto the bench. Dowell came back onto the bench as well after he'd had COVID, or he had a positive COVID test, didn't have any symptoms, so he'd been back in training last few days and did get on for the last 8 minutes. He came on for Rashica. 70th minute, that was probably the one that we were expecting to be scored, really. Brandon Williams shows good calm on the left, finds Rupp on the edge of the box, and then it's a lovely little pass into Pookie, who just has the keeper to beat, pokes it straight at Sarr, who again has spread himself well and saves with his legs. Again, Pookie should probably be scoring that one. And 10 minutes later, Rashica again, he had so many attacks on this left wing behind me in the second half. Picks out Rupp in the box, who just doesn't have the quality really, and ends up scuffing a shot towards the keeper when he certainly should have been testing him more thoroughly. Rashica gets replaced by Dowell a couple of minutes after that, and there was one last sort of half chance really, a lovely back heel from Billy Gilmour under pressure. The ball eventually comes across to Dowell, who whips a lovely cross in from the left, which just looks for that split second like it's going to be perfect for Pookie, but there's a bit too much on it, and Teemu can't turn it Joelwards, and then from there on it's a fairly scratchy bit of pinball really. Last few minutes, not a real build up of steam. They had brought on Adama Traore for the closing stages, who of course is a very tricky customer, but he couldn't break the deadlock for Wolves either. So yeah, everything goes along nice and positively. If they can avoid defeat at Newcastle, then they will remain off the bottom of the Premier League table. We'll know that for sure. Obviously, a win would be massive and would cut Newcastle adrift, who they've got a better goal difference than Norwich, haven't they? So if I'm remembering that correctly, I haven't got the table in front of me. With a win, they would still move Norwich back to the bottom of the table. So it is a big game. They're still winless, aren't they? They lost 2-0 to Arsenal, I think it finished in the end. So Eddie Howe still looking for his first win. And yeah, they're going to be desperate to get that one, aren't they? There is a bit of pressure on them. They're in this sort of weird limbo state, really, aren't they? Where their fans are sort of waiting for January and this splurge of transfer spending, but they're not there yet. And from what I saw of the game today, they had Matt Ritchie playing at left back. He's not really a left back, is he? Makes you wonder whether Jamal Lewis might come in against his old team. But for now, I think that'll do. Let me know what you thought of the game in the comments below. We'll be recording the new Pinkham podcast before we head home for the night, so make sure you find that as well. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and it's on to Newcastle on Tuesday night.